Welcome back, you guys. Today we are making some delicious Oreo frosting. So this frosting is highly addictive and it's fantastic because it's a really great consistency, which allows you to smooth it onto cakes, to pipe with it. You can see here I'm using a Wilton 1M. The options are really limitless. So the base of this frosting is my go-to American buttercream, and I'm going to show you guys how I make that before we start incorporating the Oreos. By now you guys know this recipe is so simple. It's literally butter, salt, vanilla, a little bit of powdered sugar, and some heavy cream. So now that our frosting base is ready to go, it's time to work on our Oreos. So I'm just using classic Oreos here. We're going to drop them into the food processor so you don't have to remove the centers. I think I ended up using about 1.5 sleeves worth of Oreos, but in the end you're going to need 1 cup of crushed Oreos. So you really need to use a food processor for this. If you don't, cutting them up, it's really hard to get them small enough into a fine enough texture that it will work in your frosting. So I started out with a few quick pulses on my KitchenAid, and I then crushed these Oreos. So I let it go for at least a minute to make sure that all the pieces were a really uniform size and really small so that they wouldn't clog my frosting tip. You guys might think I'm being dramatic about having the Oreos be perfectly crushed, but you can see here I got a bit of cookie stuck in my frosting tip. It was so annoying, it ruined my swirl. I had to pick it out with a toothpick. It's just really frustrating, and it's something that you can totally avoid if you're just careful as you crush your Oreos. So this is why I do recommend against using a knife, just because it's really hard to get your Oreo pieces small enough. So now that our Oreos are perfectly crushed and we don't have any big chunks in there, it's time to add it into our frosting. So I have here a batch of my American buttercream, and I'm adding in, it's literally like Oreo powder if you look at how fine the texture it is, and that's exactly what you're looking for. Once I had added about 1 cup of those crushed Oreos into my batch of frosting, using my paddle attachment, I slowly mix them in on a really low speed. So I'm literally just turning my KitchenAid up to the stir setting, and I'm doing some initial pulses here so that way the bits of Oreo don't fly all over my counter. So I let this go for a couple minutes until the Oreos were uniformly distributed throughout the batter. I gave the frosting a quick stir around the sides of the bowl with my spatula, just because sometimes bits of cookie can get stuck on the sides, or they can also get stuck on the attachment itself. So once I scraped that off, I gave the frosting one more stir on a low speed, and then it was pretty much ready to go. The very last step before this frosting is ready to be used is that you should give it a really good stir by hand. So as you can see, there are still some tiny air bubbles in the frosting, and by working it around with my rubber spatula, I'm going to help push out any excess air to give us some super smooth, silky Oreo buttercream. And that's exactly what we want when we're decorating cakes. So this step is definitely an arm workout, but I promise that it's worth it. If you guys want to whip up a batch of your own Oreo frosting, the recipe for this Oreo buttercream is up on Chelsweets.com. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and hopefully I'll see you guys again soon.